Penny Hardaway, University of Memphis men's basketball coach, he held his weekly radio show last night and discussed the AAC Player of the Year race, specifically the race as it pertains to his star guard, PJ Haggerty. He was asked, Penny Hardaway, whether he thinks PJ Haggerty will soon be named the AAC Player of the Year, and he said, quote, "I would think so, because he's been doing it all year long. He's had a lot of weight on his shoulders to be able to still produce. That's a special player." Bennett Doyle, you think PJ Haggerty's got it locked up? He's going to be the AAC Player of the Year, isn't he? There's no debate, is there?
Yeah, I mean, who else would it be? I can't even think of who you could possibly give it to other than him.
Well, you couldn't give it to that Blazer that just got embarrassed over.
I was going to Yaxel. No, he ain't getting it. Sorry.
You can't give it to a Blazer, not after what happened at Bartow Arena.
No, it's got to go to a Tiger, and it's got to go to their best player. I mean, it's just this is easy.
This is easy. You either give it to PJ Haggerty or you give it to Yaxel. But if you give it to Yaxel, Dane Danger's going to go take it and give it to PJ Haggerty.
That's right. So yeah, I got no issue.
However you want to do this is fine, but it's going to end up with PJ Haggerty. You either give it to PJ Haggerty or you try to give it to Yaxel, but if you give it to Yaxel, Dane Danger's going to go take it, embarrass him, dunk on him, and then give it to PJ. Either way, it ends up with PJ Haggerty. Also, yesterday, seemed to, for the first time, I think very publicly, make it clear that, yeah, this season's amazing. PJ Haggerty's incredible, but you better go ahead and start thinking about next year because he has eligibility left, and there's going to be schools and power conferences with incredible NIL budgets who are going to be interested in seeing if he wants to jump into the transfer portal and make $1.5 million, $2 million, $3 million, $4 million next season to play college basketball. Penny more or less was saying, you got to get your money right. We got to get our money right. I mean, this is the type of thing that you have to think about in college athletics now. Do you think the Memphis community, whatever that entails, you think they respond to this? Like, here's my question. Do you think there's a scenario where Memphis loses PJ Haggerty, even though Memphis clearly would love to keep PJ Haggerty, the same way, say, Seton Hall after last season lost Kadari Richmond to St. John's for no other reason, and this is according to Kadari, to Shaheen Holloway, and to Rick Pitino. They lost him for no other reason than Rick Pitino said, I've got a lot of money to give you if you want to come here, and Seton Hall simply couldn't get comparable with the money, so he changed schools within the own conference. Do you think there's a scenario where we ever read a story where PJ Haggerty says, I wanted to stay at Memphis, I love Penny Hardaway, FedEx Forum's my favorite, but I couldn't pass up this money that Alabama had or Texas had or Kansas had or whatever?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly possible because, like you said, I mean, there are athletic departments that we know have a lot more money to operate with than Memphis does. Obviously, Memphis is operating, at a very high level in college athletics. There's no question about that. But, there's also SEC schools out there that are, spending a ton of money in Big Ten schools. So, sure, I think it's possible. Do I think that they can come up with the money to be able to keep it? Yeah, I do. Like I think that Memphis would, if he intends to come back and play in college and not try to go pro, then yeah, I think Memphis is going to have a chance to keep him here just because they're going to make him a really good offer. There's no doubt about it.
Two things. One, I believe PJ Haggerty can make more money next year, playing college basketball than he can make playing professional basketball.
Okay. Yep.
Whatever that involves. So I think he's going to be a college basketball player next season. If his goal is to make as much money as he can make playing basketball somewhere, I think it'll be at the Division I level of college basketball. I do think you ready for this? Not going to be schools that are interested in seeing if he wants to get into the transfer portal, but that there are already schools interested in seeing if he wants to get into the transfer portal. If he's tired of playing in gyms that look like UTSA's gym and would rather play in Big Ten arenas every night or SEC arenas every night or Big East arenas every night. I'm certain that's already happening. And I'm certain Penny knows that whatever they had to put on the table to get PJ Haggerty to commit to Memphis last year, the price of going business in that business has gone up dramatically. And if we know that Coleman Hawkins, who was a okay player at Illinois, but just like he wasn't Illinois' best player last season. Not sure he was Illinois' second best player last season. But we know that he got in the transfer portal and reportedly Kansas State gave him $2 million, right? Great Osibor, very good Mountain West Conference player. His coach got a Pac-12 job that became a Power Conference job. His coach left and went to Washington. Great Osibor followed him to Washington, reportedly for an NIL package of around $2 million. So here's what we know. There are at least two dudes who got in the transfer portal last year who were neither one of them as good of a college basketball player as PJ Haggerty. And they got $2 million. You could reasonably assume that's what it's going to cost, at least, to get PJ Haggerty back to Memphis.
Wow, man. What a time.
What a time. And here's what I would tell you. I am confident that Memphis has enough wealthy people and enough corporate support that if it really does come down to you have to have $2.5 million to give to PJ Haggerty or else he's leaving you to go to an SEC school or a Big Ten school or wherever, I think Memphis has enough wealthy boosters and enough corporate support to get that done. I do not think they'll lose him over money. Here's what Rick Pitino said about Kadary Richmond when Kadary left Seton Hall to go to St. John's. I know this wasn't a big story in our market, but it's a massive story in the New York market. It's Seton Hall's best player going from one state to the next to be one of St. John's best players for money and, according to everybody, really no other reason. Rick Pitino talked about this publicly. He said, I want to be very clear about this. Kadary Richmond's not playing for me at St. John's because he always dreamed of playing for me or at St. John's. He loves Seton Hall. He loves Shaheen Holloway. If the money were close, he would still be at Seton Hall. He would still be playing for Shaheen Holloway. But the truth is, I had a really big check to offer him, and Shaheen could not match it. Seton Hall could not match it. Seton Hall and Shaheen couldn't even get close. If they could have got close, like in the neighborhood, he would have just stayed there. But they couldn't get close. They didn't have the money. I got a billionaire who's helping me, and they don't have anybody like that helping them. So he did what any other person in his shoes would do. I'm making up numbers here, but just think of it this way. If Seton Hall's saying, hey, come back and play for us, here's $200,000. And St. John's is saying, hey, leave there, come play for us, here's $1.2 million. Like, what are you doing? It doesn't matter how much you love your coach, your school, your apartment, anything. You have to leave. That's what he did. You don't want PJ Haggerty to have to make that kind of decision because that's really not even asking him to make a decision. You're making it on his own. You're making it for him. If the money is dramatically different, he'll have to leave. I would advise him to leave. Anybody would. Here's the thing, the difference between Memphis and Seton Hall. I think Memphis has disadvantages relative to SEC and Big Ten and Power Conference schools, obviously. But I do not think the wealthy people who care about the University of Memphis and or the corporate partners that care about the University of Memphis athletic department, I don't think they would let them lose a basketball player that they want over money, particularly when Penny Hardaway is in the middle of the best season of his college coaching career. Like your proudest alum is now succeeding and set up to continue to succeed as long as he has the money to keep his star guard and surround him with other interesting pieces to create something that could become back-to-back AAC champions. I don't think Memphis supporters will let that fall apart over money. So I think PJ Haggerty will play at Memphis next season. Penny's already said he wants him back. I don't know that the NBA is a realistic option. It'll just be a money situation, and I would trust, if I'm a Memphis fan, and I am, I would trust that Memphis will do what it has to do to make sure he's back in school at the University of Memphis next season.
The Gary Parrish Show, live weekdays at 10 a.m.